Hey everybody, welcome to the chat. Welcome to the new live stream. Zweihander, the Pits of Terra. Good to see you. We are if you popped in expecting a Geeks Can't stream or a Middle Earth stream, both of those things are happening, just not tonight. You'll get a Geeks Can't stream, actually an interview, also about Zweihander tomorrow evening, and you'll get Middle Earth, the final episode on this coming Thursday, March 14th. But tonight, we are kicking off our Zweihander 6 to 8 session, probably 8 session, dungeon crawly campaign called the Pits of Terra. I'm going to be your game master, your host for the evening. My name is Zach Goins. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Geek Scamp podcast. But I am joined tonight by three of my best yahoos. Let's see here. Let's just start. Let's do a quick introduction. I know we haven't quite figured out perfectly all of our character details. So for the moment, though, I think, why don't you introduce yourself, your name, and also what profession you chose to play. And we'll start with you, Shadow.
Sure. Say those three things again.
Your name and your profession. Just two.
That's two things. Okay, perfect. Yes. My character's name is Ungus Finch, and I'm playing a barber surgeon.
Nice. Perfect. Angus Finch, the barber surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. Mr. Andrew, what are you playing this evening?
My name's Andrew Hindenburg. Tonight I will be playing a chosen by the name of Leonhardt Sternhell.
Leonhardt.
One more time, Leonhardt Sternhell.
Ooh, very cool.
Very, very strong name.
That is. I was gonna say. You know what? You stole the words from my mouth. I'm like, that's a name that demands power. Absolutely. Cool, Leonhardt. And then, last but not least, Ulysses. What do you have for us this evening?
Well, I am playing Ezekiel, who is a Diabolus. A practitioner of covenant magic.
Yes.
Knowing many, many dark things in this dark world.
That is fantastic. So one of the things that I love right out the gate is that all three of you have picked a name that is, I think, perfectly in world, perfectly like that right blend of archaic, but also of our own world, and that makes me happy. So we talked about it a little bit. If you tuned into session -1, where Daniel and I talked about Pits of Terra, but for my players and for you watching tonight, this campaign setting, Pits of Terra, is like a post-apocalyptic, like distant future of Earth, and the wasteland that has been brought about due to a few things, probably more things than what the world now remembers. One of the things, however, is a gigantic rift that opened up a chasm, and demons from what you would call hell have kind of poured up out of that and on to the world at large. Other things happen, probably nuclear holocaust of some sort. Definitely, it's just kind of like the world is largely this wasteland. There's all sorts of mutations and things like that have been brought about. Humanity is largely underground. We live in tunnels and caves and bunkers and silos and things like that. And technology is remnant to the point of being basically magic, where you may be able to use certain devices, but how they work, especially mechanical devices, how they work is probably foreign to you. There's also, because of all the mutations and things of the flora and fauna, there are all sorts of weird creatures that populate the surface and also the Underterra, the underworld that you reside in. So the Earth is not a nice place anymore. I think, fellas, I pitched you guys on. There's kind of 3 factions here early in the in the campaign. 3 factions that you might be from, you might be interacting with. 3 factions of humans. The first faction of humans is called the Thumpers, and the Thumpers kind of inhabit the middle of the continent in an area called the West Web, an area that is really around the chasm. And the Thumpers are arguably religious fanatics, religious zealots. They are led by an individual that takes on the title called Preacher. And they...
Religious fanatics, religious zealots.
No worries. They take the fight into the chasm, into hell, and into the demons that are still crawling up from there. To the east are the Penobites, or the Pennies, as Thumpers call them. The Penobites are not as actively militant in that way, but they guard their borders very religiously in their own way, and largely that is because they have these massive storehouses that even now are somewhat filled with supplies. And so what you'll find, and we're going to show some images, some pictures, some references here in a moment, but what you're going to find is that the Pennies are slightly more technologically advanced, because they still have remnant devices and things from yesteryear, more so than the Thumpers. And then the last faction is off to the west in the Red Wastes, and that's called the Bimbasini. And the Bimbasini live in like missile silos and things like that, but they also are one of the few groups of people that still push out onto the surface and brave the wastes and the fallout and the mutants and the creatures that live out there. So there's a lot of the Bimbasini are kind of these, not really nomadic, but very active, very mobile, very like a guerrilla acting individuals. And like I said, we'll show some pictures here in a moment. But that's kind of where we're the foundations that we've laid. Fellas, before we get into some more depth there, and what we're going to do tonight is we're going to finish out. You guys have a last few things to build out on your character sheets. And we're going to do that, and we're going to kind of set the stage, get you guys into a little bit of a game here. Do you have any questions about that larger concept of the world of Terra?
Who are we again?
That's right. So I think that you all are going to be in the West Web, in Thumper territory. When you start out, you're going to be interacting with Thumpers. You are welcome to choose to be a Bimbasini or a Penobite if that's what you want. But you would be, if you do choose to be one of those, just keep in mind that you would be in Thumper land working with Thumpers at the moment.
I think being a Thumper, given the religious component that was written into the description, I think being Thumpers makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, am I correct that the Thumpers are the ones that are the closest to the rifts and the things that the demonic forces below?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. In fact, let's start there. Let's transition over, and I'm going to show you guys. All right. So let's show it here. Let's bump you guys over to this map right there. We'll see. Maybe. I'll hit refresh here. There we go.
Ooh.
Okay. So, here's a couple of maps to kind of help you guys get into the mindset of where we're at.
My town is the chasm. I see how it is, Zach.
That's right. You're right there. That's right. Yeah, that's right there. Okay, so I'm going to nerd out with you guys for a second. If you were playing this at home, maybe you wouldn't. But I'll tell you guys. So what loosely you should see here is that the chasm that opened is on the New Madrid fault line that we actually have in the real world. And theoretically, maybe that fault line shifting is what released demons in this world. So who knows? We'll figure it out together.
Is that the one that goes under St. Louis?
Yep. Yeah, it kind of runs along the boundaries of Missouri and Illinois and some of that. And who knows where it'll expand. So if you're looking here, you'll see that this area here, the yellow area, is called the West Web. That's kind of where Thumper territory is. They don't control all of this, but there are Thumper personnel kind of scattered throughout that space. Mm-hmm. There's 3 major cities. They're loosely named after nicknames or things that you might have for cities that exist today. So you have Chi-Town, Hart, and Sebus. And then you have the Reelfoot Chasm there in the center. The Red Waste, which are the Bembasini, is kind of, if you think about it, from like Colorado west, and Salt Lake is the theoretically a city over there that the Bembasini still occupy, though how much they occupy is probably a good question. Zach, your fair city isn't really here anymore. Atlanta's gone, but there's a marshland instead, so it's improved, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my drive to the beach is shorter, so
That's right.
Win-win.
Absolutely, and it's kind of like desolate down there. Like there's mutants and creatures, but very few people live down there because there's not an underground really. And so any humans would have to just live on the surface and brave the elements and all the creatures and things. So very few people, if anybody, lives down in the marshlands at this point. Unless you want to be a recluse or something like that, in which case you might be from there. And then we got a lot of cities kind of packed into the east. The east is where the Penobites still reside. That's where you have Empire City, the Cradle, DC, and Steel City. Are still locked in there. I will draw your attention to a second map, though. The one on the right. This one is kind of a fun map. I intentionally haven't spelled out a lot there, but what you will see is kind of the biggest threats for each region. Mutants are the big threat to the Red Wastes. Grindel are the biggest threats to kind of the northern elements of the West Web. Obviously, demons are a huge threat to the majority of the web around the chasm. The Penobites don't have a heavy threat right in their area. They kind of have cleared out a lot of things, so they're less of a heavy war group. But then up to the north is something called the Deathless, which you don't know much about. But if you think about the cold, frozen north up there, think like in Game of Thrones terms. There's probably a White Walker army somewhere to the north, and you hear tell of a lot of like necromancers and individuals who make alliances with demons to bring back the dead. Are up there where bodies freeze. And last a bit longer than they do down here. So just keeping that in mind, that those are kind of the big threats that you might be facing. Okay, so we are going to dive into some finishing out of characters. And I asked for you guys to save some of this because there's a couple elements that I think are better for our campaign for you guys to kind of collaborate on, and the rest of it you guys built beforehand. So the first 10 steps of character creation, all the way through selecting your age, but you're picking your profession, picking your upbringing, your ancestry, things like that, you've all already worked through. And the steps that we're going to focus on tonight are brush with death, first scar, mementos, and tragic flaws in her strength potentially, and name and bonds, which you guys already picked your name, which is perfect. So these are things that we're going to do as a group. When we talk about brush with death, typically we would be rolling on a D100 chart, and everybody would have a different brush with death. Because in Zweihander, the idea is that either you actually died and were brought back, and that's kind of what set you on this path of being a survivor and changing the course of your destiny, or you had an extremely close encounter with death of some sort. Maybe that you didn't die, but something close enough to where you carry a scar, you carry a memento, and it radically changed your world. I think for you guys, I think that it would make a lot of sense to find out how a chosen and a diabolist and a barber surgeon came together. I think the brush with death is going to be part of that. So before I go any further...
Are we playing a role-playing game or putting on a stage show?
That's right. That's right. What sound... I'll start with you, Andrew, since you quipped up. What sounds interesting, or what do you think would be interesting to have some sort of, as like an altercation or this moment of tribulation for your group that might have brought you together?
Not sure my character should be the one who answers that, but maybe it has something to do with the Great Rift or the Real Foot Chasm, as it's called.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think? Maybe we were exploring it or something. Maybe Ulysses was trying to find, I don't know, demon ichor or something.
Yeah. So, Ulysses, you're playing a diabolist or a diabolist.
Yes.
Kind of, what's like the flavor of that class? Kind of like an acolyte of
Kind of,
something.
yeah. Basically, chosen are people who are imbued with the power of the gods. My chosen god is the martyr, which is basically like a goddess or god of healing. So I'm not really sure how that's going to work with the diabolist, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, and why are you guys hanging out with that creepy barber surgeon?
Listen,
Well-
sometimes in the medical field you need a surgeon, okay?
It's
That's
true.
right.
So I read through the different brushes with death, and a lot of them are super cool. I'm going to throw out one. A decrepit stagecoach made me its unwilling passenger on a journey to the underworld.
Hey, I like the sound of that.
And I like the idea of it picking up the three of us. And because, the underworld can be flavored different ways in this campaign. Maybe it took us into the deeper pits of Terra. Maybe it took us into the chasm. Maybe it took us to some place. But
Maybe
that's
that's
what
collapsed underneath us, and we ended up in the chasm, and we had to fight our way out.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. That's a cool idea. Like it picked us all up and took us on a crazy ride down through the cavern, and now we're kind of, or I don't know, and now we are wherever we are.
Like it
It's
just
dropped us wherever we're starting. Huh?
Somehow.
One idea.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like the idea that it's probably not and I know the flavor's there, but it's probably not a carriage. but there are a couple of things.
Minecart.
Mine carts, yeah, shafts, think like elevator shafts or things like that raise and lower between the chasm. There's definitely tunnels that go down into there, things of that nature. So I see no problem with you guys having like basically, but so there's that aspect. But Ulysses, you tell me if I'm wrong or not. But I sense when you talk about a, 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 a carriage, I don't know that we're even talking about a literal carriage here. In the sense of, I think that it could be there's a supernatural element to what you just described, and I think that could be where the chosen comes in, or where your Diabolist and their pact or their covenant comes in. Some one of you, maybe you're either the martyr, or on the other end of things, this entity that you've aligned with slightly.
The crouching one?
The crouching one, yeah. Supplied the means necessary, the transportation necessary to draw you down into the infernal depths. And it probably wasn't really a thing other than you know, those entities from beyond the stars, those entities that you follow, Ezekiel. It's entirely possible that something that you likened as to a carriage, or you best described as a carriage, but was certainly not a carriage, was drawn to your residence, and as you set foot in it, it whisked you away. Not unlike, think like the spirit from Christmas Carol, right? Like whisking Ebenezer to different locales. You were whisked, and on this pathway through, somehow, some way, some reason, Angus and Leonhardt are drawn into this carriage at the same moment, or in the moments thereafter.
If it was some sort of infernal contraption, I was probably trying to chase it down and destroy it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you got a ping on some sort of like some abomination of a spirit or a presence that had broken through the barriers into Thumper territory and was pushing against the wards that your crew have erected. And as you chased it, you inadvertently bound yourself to it. I love that.
That would explain my character's horrible internal guilt too.
Yes. Zach, what do you think is the reason behind Angus's being drawn into this infernal specter?
You always got to have a butcher around, right? I mean,
Yeah,
He's a barber.
Yeah, he's both a little bit. Probably just out of sheer curiosity. You know, just to see something like that, and it's weird, and freaky, and probably just the kind of thing that would naturally stop in his presence and like the door open and allow him on. Weird things like that happen to him a lot, so he frequently finds himself, you know, just by happenstance in places that are a little bit strange and outside the norm.
I love that, because the other aspect, right, is that Ulysses, you're a follower and adherent of the Crouching One, who is basically relishes in bloodshed and pain in general, and so the barber surgeon, even if they're not an adherent to the same faith, the barber surgeon's table is has a lot of similarities to the altar aligned to the crouching one. I would imagine.
Very cool. I like that.
I like that a lot. I have an interesting proposal,
Mm-hmm.
and this is ripping off that my inner strength from the crouching one is creating dark sanctuaries
Mm-hmm.
with its focus on graveyards and battlefields and abandoned sites of old. How about this? How about Ungus Finch was visiting the grave of a recently departed uh, associate. And I was actually in the graveyard doing a ritual. And the rich and Leonhardt was attracted because he thought that some type of diabolic, demonic thing was going down in the graveyard. And as the three of us all converge on the grave of the said individual, which might even be shaped in some way like a vehicle, a mind vehicle, or just sometimes when people do gravestones that have kind of a flourish to them, a sweep in the stonework.
Mm-hmm.
The grave collapses while the three of us are converging upon it and takes us down under. And in that grave collapse, which might have been physical, might have been metaphysical, that's our brush with death. And we find ourselves back above the surface in the graveyard again, in a new space, kind of all splayed out on the lawn or the dirt.
So the idea here, I think, is I like that. I like that. Like you had this flash, and I'll maybe expand on it a little bit. I think like as you go deep within and you're pulled, the vessel draws you into the chasm. You can see some things, and let's go ahead and let's share. I'm going to share some pictures with you guys on. Play into this here. So I think, let's see if I can find it. I think that, yeah, here we go. Here's a graphic. So when you are drawn down in, the chasm isn't just a chunks of raw rock. Like whenever this broke open, like buildings, effigies, strongholds, monoliths, things like cracked up with it from hell. And so as you're drawn in, you see things. Now these are things that Thumpers may see from time to time, especially if you're one of the raiding parties that enters. But you see some of these, and these things like are quite clearly promises of torment, of enslavement, of capture of humanity as a whole. It is a promise of things to come, a reality that has begun to manifest, but one that the Thumpers have kept from coming about fully. So you'll pass through some of that, but I want to draw your attention, I think, to how about this picture here. Yeah, Zach, you're muted, but I saw some excitement in your eyes, nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
What
you have all the perfect art for this. I love it.
It worked out. Yeah. So as you're drawn down in, you swarm around and have a revelation of this, what you see as a coffin, a metal coffin with chains that wrap around it. Now, whether this is actually a coffin or not is the same question of whether or not you're actually in a vehicle. but it's the words that you might use to describe it. But you can see that these chains that bind it are obviously holding it tightly intact. And what you can see is that as you hover here for a moment down deep in the chasm, further than probably any thumpers have managed to tread in this entire existence, you can see that some of the links of chain on this coffin have begun to glow. And they start to like superheat, like you can see here. And you can begin to see like slag or something starting to like drip from a couple of links as the metal starts to melt. And just as you see that, just as the first of the slag starts to melt, you see the coffin kind of push and rattle, and it opens just a fraction. And when it does, a vapor pours out. You can smell it. It smells wretched, filthy, like rot, like a festering wound, just blood and pus mixed together. And as that kind of like assaults your senses, you feel some sort of entity, an entity that maybe the Diabolist is used to having this sort of sensation, but not from this one, kind of pushing at the corners of your mind. And the moment, just in that brief moment that you have of this thing pushing against your mind, the vehicle recoils, and you feel something cling to you for a moment, get stretched, and then snap, and recoil back into the coffin, as you are pulled back. And then Ulysses, I love the idea that like then as it rockets back towards the surface, your mind's still kind of like rattled by whatever this force was that touched you, and the essence therein. You spill out onto the dirt in this cavern.
I love it. You know, Zach, as you were talking about it, I realized sometimes our creativity happens underneath the surface of consciousness. But for those of you who know, Ezekiel is the prophet in the Old Testament who has a vision of the chariot and a vision of God. And this is a very cool vision of a quote unquote, carriage, chariot, vehicle of some sort, and a vision of a very dark, demonic, theological possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And that's cool.
That's cool. As you spill out onto the dirt there, I think the brush with death that we're going to talk about is, it is this as you described it, it's this chariot ride, or this carriage ride into the abyss, and this encounter with an entity of pestilence. From that, if that is our brush with death, several things can be derived at this point. Zach, I'm gonna prod you here for this next piece, and then we'll bounce back to Mr. Andrew for the next one. But we have that for our brush with death. The first scar. Again, there's a D100 table of first scars, but scars are a mechanical detriment that you take on because of this experience with death. Tell me, maybe not worrying about so much of the mechanical, but what sort of scar? Doesn't have to be physical; it can be of the mind or whatever. But what sort of scars come to mind for you that might be an interesting play here?
Can you expound upon that a little more?
Yeah, so like as an example of like a physical one, right? Like if you had a brush with death that was, you got jumped by bandits around a campfire, and they slit you and your companion's throats, make off with your treasure, and you all wake up later having survived somehow, right? Like that brush with death, you're all gonna have the injury was slit throats. What does that scar look like? Well, maybe there's this jagged, ragged wound across your throats that makes it hard to talk, or your voice is distorted. So that's an example that's like more simple. But with this sort of thing, you have several things to play on because you were pulled through hell by this entity. You had an encounter with an entity of pestilence, and then you were pulled back through. So you could definitely have some sort of pestilential scar, or you could have a scar of the mind, things of that nature.
I see. What if it's a little bit of both? What if it's a persistent cough that that you just think that you have? That you feel like you constantly have something kind of like dusty in your lungs that makes you want to cough, but nothing ever really comes out.
Okay, yeah, I like that. Any thoughts, fellas, on modifying that or adding to it?
I mean, it's got to have some sort of mechanical effect to be a scar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the list of scars, there is chronic vomit. That's one possibility. There's lost scent. I'm trying to think about scars that would be triggered by pestilence. By that, you described the coffin as oozing pus and blood, right?
Yeah, especially the smell, the stench of it. But yeah, there was a visual aspect as well, for sure.
Are these individual ones that we're picking?
So that's a good question. So what I think is, like, if you each want to find a scar that you like for yourselves, that you're welcome to. Or if we hit upon one that you all really like, I think that's great too. But they're all going to come from the same experience.
I like End of the Line personally.
Talk to us about End of the Line, Andrew. What do you like about that, and what is it?
You cannot have children.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like 100%. If you want that to be like the thing,
I got infected with some sort of "you cannot have children" virus.
That's right. I love that. Like, I think it's weird. It's a weird result, but like it means something in this world where supplies are limited, but also people are limited. So
yeah, it's like a cool version of contamination that made us sterile.
Mm-hmm. Now, Zach, to your end, there's a couple that might be fun for you. There is lingering disease and weak lungs.
Ooh, yeah.
So
those sound.
Lingering disease means that when you're exposed to a disease, the GM will select a second one you will have to successfully resist as well. So there's this idea that something manifests. Anytime something crops up, something else that's kind of been buried within you also has a chance of cropping up. And then weak lungs, when you move down the peril condition track due to a failed toughness test, you move one additional step down.
I like that. That's pretty cool.
Okay, cool. Well, let's put weak lungs. So Andrew Leonhardt has weak testicles, and Angus has weak lungs. Ulysses, is there something that you're drawn to in general?
Oh,
and you're welcome to pick the same one. Like, it doesn't. That's fine.
No, you know what? I'm going to go back because of the pestilential smell and that stench. I'm going to go with chronic vomit.
Okay. Nice.
When you're moved to dying or exhausted, you begin to throw up and must immediately imbibe
laudanum.
Laudanum. If you don't, you lose your next turn.
Nice. Fantastic. Yeah, these are great. Good variety. Yeah, so you each have...
Weak testicles.
Yes, absolutely. A weak
Just my
stomach.
character, okay?
Yeah. Awesome. Fantastic.
And this is merely our first scar, right?
That's your first scar. First of many, probably.
Yes.
I also have the spiritual defense ability from being a chosen, which means I get +1 to my damage threshold for each scar I have.
Ooh.
So my damage threshold just went up.
Nice. So the next step will be a memento, but before we get to a memento, let's talk for a moment about what being a thumper means. And let's decide before we, because mementos might be something that you wish to tie in. Let's talk a little bit more. Let's give you some visuals on thumpers, penobites, and Bembasini, and then we'll go from there. So I by the way, folks, any images that you see here other than these maps are things that I found on the internet. And so just keep in mind, these are not, these are cool people making cool art, but I don't know all their names, so we appreciate them nonetheless. Okay, so thumpers. Let's talk about thumpers. So thumpers, as we've talked about, are kind of like religious zealots. That's not all that a thumper has to be, though. And I know that you guys kind of picked or built characters that can be tied to that, especially two of you. But the main thing that you should keep in mind, right, is that this is a group that is like hardened by war. They're not the most wealthy of individuals because they don't have time for that, and they expend a lot of resources on taking care of their injured and their wounded, and by making other things safe. Here's kind of a general feel for, the types of individuals that you can find in here. Let's see. Let's give another one here. One more. What you're typically going to see across all the characters that you come across is that, like, not that you're like dirty and filthy all the time, but this is not a clean place that you're living in, and there's constantly...
You're not dirty and filthy all the time, but you're dirty and filthy all the time.
You're kind of dirty and filthy all the time. Yeah, absolutely. The guy in the center here is not him. Let me see if I can find where I put... if not, I'll pull him up later. But you guys have there is a preacher that you follow. He's not an evil person, but definitely, like, being this close to the chasm, there's an element of corruption that's prevalent within all. And using magic is also playing with forces of corruption. So typically, whether
even like divine magic.
Yeah, even divine, like, there is still this idea of playing around with not necessarily corruption. Probably corruption is the wrong word, but you're playing with forces outside outside of humanity, outside of the norm, and you're reaching past the stars or into the stars for power, or to someplace beyond. And anytime that happens, there's
Sometimes
increased chances
beyond
for...
stares back.
That's right, exactly right. So there is some concepts there, but I would say don't feel over much like you're an evil entity. You just might look a little more haggard than everyone else, but that doesn't mean that you have to play him as twisted and cruel.
Have a little more dirt on me than everyone else.
That's right. That's right. So let's just give you a couple of examples because you definitely would have known about these individuals. Let's talk about the penobites, or what you would call them, pennies. So penobites are led by deacons, a cabal of deacons. So that's like a good example of a deacon there. But they also have major storehouses, and those storehouses are guarded by troops that have firearms. Not like super fancy firearms, typically salvaged firearms, but definitely firearms. And you'll also find that Penobites in general, because they are less at war all the time and they have more supplies, they look a little bit more well off for the most part. That said, sometimes, uh, idle hands are the devil's handiwork, as is oft said, and sometimes proves to be true, because within the Penobite civilization, there are definitely cults that spring up. And some say that even the cabal of deacons is a cult in and of itself at this point, that worship things that they should not be worshiping, things that crawl out of the abyss, or entities closely associated like that. So that's kind of the flavor of pennies. And then last but not least, we have Bimbasini. So Bimbasini are, I think they look pretty rad. So they've got a little bit more of the flair of the upper world of Terra, of the surface to them. So you'll see like this guy is got some Grendel skulls on his person and more hides and furs. This guy has some sort of awesome rodent, hairless rodent.
All rat, isn't it?
Yeah, animal companion here that he runs around with. And then we'll show this gal, I guess, here. There we go. So they're definitely more furs, more hides, more salvage, more taking things from the land, and a lot of them you'll see will have like masks or some sort of like way of filtering out the air if they're gonna be outside for a long period of time. They may have artifacts from bygone ages that help them in that way too. Okay, that's kind of a general sense. As we think about now your mementos, mementos are a tangible fragment of your brush with death, something laden with symbolic weight. It's not necessarily mechanical, other than when you're in a scene related to your brush with death. If you hold on to your memento, you could ignore peril condition track penalties. So it's super handy if the scene kind of has some sort of essence tied to what your brush with death was. So now that you kind of have more of a visual sense of the world around you, let's start with you, Andrew. Is there something that comes to mind that would be a good memento for your character?
Start with somebody else, please.
Fair enough. Ulysses, is there something that comes up on your end?
A memento to remind us of our brush with death.
That's right.
Yes, a box of.
Very cool. A box of maggots. Yeah, put that down as your memento.
I want to. Is it possible for me to have one of the melted chain links from the coffin?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you probably, yeah, you can decide too. I'll let you decide if you, as a chosen, walked up and actually took one of those chains. Did you do that, or did you just find it on your person when you arrived back up at the tomb?
I think I picked one up off the ground before we snap back.
Awesome. Since we're in an abbreviated campaign, Mr. Andrew, I will give you the choice. Would you like to take another scar as you grabbed this molten slag of chain? Since your character benefits from having scars, I will let you decide if that's something that you are interested in.
Here we go, Zach.
This reminds me. This reminds me of Forbidden Lands, where you have to like inflict damage on yourself to get magic points.
That's right. Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, let's do it. Sure.
Okay.
You want me to roll it randomly, or
No. You can pick it. You grasp this. You probably have burn scar, which is whenever you suffer fire damage, you move one step down the peril condition track. Burn scars makes a lot of sense to me. But if you find one that you like different, you're welcome to tweak it. But something tied to picking up a red hot piece of chain. But I love that as a memento. I think that's fantastic. All right, Zach, what does Angus have?
Pyrophobia might work too.
Oh, pyrophobia is a great one. Yeah, I don't mind that at all. Yeah. Zach, what's a good memento on your end?
I was actually gonna see if he maybe could find a chunk of the rock or stone that was making up the coffin on the ground and take that.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, so you have a like a shard, a fragment of it. Now, once you get back here, so is it part of the coffin that you saw enchained, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you get back, you pick up a fragment of coffin. But once you get back here and you look at it again in your hand,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a metal fragment. It's not a stone fragment. It is extremely brittle. It's probably think about the about as thick as like a dime, right? Not thick at all. It chips really easily, but you could like wrap it in a cloth or something like that to keep it intact. But it looks to you like it is this mottled green, slightly concave or curved surface of this abnormally shaped thing. And we'll say just because you've had time, this didn't happen yesterday. The more you've looked at it and the more you've thought about it, this has the closest thing that you can tie this to is down in the farms. They raise a lot of different types of critters, but one of the ones that they raise still is lizards, and you think that this piece reminds you of a lizard egg, like the fragment of an egg.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
Awesome. So you guys have your mementos. Hold on to those. So now, tragic flaw and inner strength. In the wake of your death, you developed two distinctive and wildly different traits. Your tragic flaw and inner strength serve as role-playing tools, aiding you in navigating complex dilemmas in Zweihander. So basically the idea being calling upon your tragic flaw in a scene when it makes sense for the narrative, and you will gain an additional reward points for the end of the session. So I say that as a note to the same is true for inner strengths. Basically, these are two pieces of you that manifested. Maybe they were already there in some respect before your brush with death, but they're definitely a part of you now. And utilizing one of these or both of these during the game session gives you basically more XP, more RP to build things out. So this is completely flavor, but it is the way that you earn extra XP. So we won't go to Andrew again. First and foremost, we learned our lesson. So Ulysses, as you think about either give me a thought on what you think your tragic flaw or your inner strength might be for
So
Ezekiel.
I think for tragic flaw, how about forbidden knowledge? You seek truths that erode your spirit or morality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Forbidden knowledge sounds great.
And then go ahead.
I think actually, just as a note, I think that not only does it make sense, but I think that the way that you are drawn to the obscene was prevalent before. It was probably the catalyst for your experience to begin with. But I would guess that the fact that you chose that as your inner flaw means that that didn't diminish after this experience. It compounded. Mm. Yeah. So
yes,
absolutely.
And then in terms of an inner strength, what do you think is more in keeping, a keen intellect or an iron will?
I think I would point you towards Iron Will this time.
Got it.
Yeah, I like
Done.
that. Your determination is unyielding, allowing you to persevere when others would give up. Absolutely.
Cool.
Zach, as you think about Angus, is there a tragic flaw that pops into mind for Angus after this?
Definitely. Where to go? Morbid fascination, I think,
Hmm.
makes sense here. Your attraction to death and the macabre leads you into darkness.
Absolutely.
Are you just building Sweeney Todd? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, kind of. What's weird though is you mentioned that, but the actual vision that I have in my head, uh, and Ulysses, this might be a little bit out. You might not get this, but Zach or Andrew, if you ever watch Courage the Cowardly Dog, there's an episode with where Muriel's cousin nephew Fred comes to visit, and that's kind of like the character that I have in mind when I picture him. And he's an actual barber though, not like a barber surgeon, but like a
Nice.
freaky barber,
I
Oh my
like
god.
as he's called,
This
a
dude?
freaky barber.
Oh, Jesus. That's scary.
I love that. Okay, what's your inner strength for Angus though?
Let's see. I'm thinking maybe either. I'm thinking maybe. Where did it go? Boundless creativity or creative genius. Maybe seeing that there's more, or seeing the strangeness has opened his mind to different ways of weird thinking
Yeah.
and new possibilities.
I think boundless creativity sounds fantastic. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
What's possible has expanded in your mind. Because for you it wasn't just the seeing the coffin and and having the experience with the entity of pestilence, but it's also like you probably weren't heavily engaged with magic to begin with, and so the carriage ride itself is a revelation. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
Very cool. You probably I can imagine the way that you construct the stories, or you try to put into words what happened, is probably a catalyst for invention as well. Like, how do I describe this thing that is no one had experienced before?
I love that.
Cool. Andrew, we're to you. Tragic flaw, inner strength. What sounds cool?
So we had talked about my character's deep inner guilt before, so I think relentless persecution is good.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. You persecute
Wow.
others to alleviate your sense of guilt or inadequacy. Probably both at this point.
Probably.
Due to your yeah. I love it. All right.
Inner strength. Let's go
Inner
with
strength. What are we thinking here?
Give me a second. I haven't looked at these yet. I was too busy looking at the bad ones.
Deep compassion. I think that makes a lot of sense for you.
Would go good with relentless persecution. So is this also themed towards the
It can
whole
be,
thing we just talked about? Okay.
or it can be something to where it was already a part of you, and it just kind of got reinforced as you've.
What about unshakable faith or unyielding integrity?
Maybe. I think it would be fun to combine relentless persecution with visionary idealist.
Oh yes.
I was going to say that. I thought that was too
Yeah.
Ulysses for you.
No, I think that's good.
Yeah. So, visionary idealist, your ideas foresee the future, leading the way to new horizons. That's very cool.
That
Yeah.
makes me like you even more in real life and in character.
That's right. Awesome. Okay, well then let's do this. We got one more piece of this puzzle to suss out, and then we're gonna get into a scene. Before we get into that scene, let's take a look at one more visual that I have for you guys. So we talked about characters, we talked about the thumpers, we've shown some pictures there. Let's talk a little bit about the world itself. So obviously we have this fun picture that's kind of our core image, but let's talk a little bit. I'll show you some pictures of what you can see in general. We've shown some pictures of under Terra, but really those were tied to the chasm. Let's show you a few things here. So,
Lord dump us, Zach. Do it.
say what?
I said, Lord dump us. Do it.
That's right. No. I'm not gonna do a true lore dump. Not yet. Don't tempt me, Frodo, as we would say. But I kind of want to get. I kind of want to show you. I'll. How about this? I'll limit it to just like 3 images or ish. But I kind of wanted to give you some inspiration on what is out there in the world, because there's a lot of things. Even though humanity is largely underground, there's a lot of fantastical places here. And so I'm going to show you a few of those, some samples. This one probably is not from West Web, but there are places underground where natural caverns have given way to constructed man-made things from centuries past. Something that looks like this is certainly within the realms of possibility here on Terra, where you have networks of conduit pipe. Tunnels, dugout tunnels for purposes, especially under desolate cities. Something like this is within the realms of possibility. Let's look at a little bit about the world above. So around the chasm, you can expect the world above to look like this. Where some of those monoliths and things of that nature are kind of like pushed up through. So that's a good example there. But I also have this image of the chasm itself for you. Elsewhere in the world, this is probably in the marshlands. It could look a little bit like this. This is for you, Zach. This is what Georgia looks like now. Not Atlanta, but Georgia. So I actually took that photo in Georgia. Yeah.
You mean in your world,
Yeah.
not right now?
Yeah. So that's like an aspect of the world above, and then let's do, last but not least, let's go to the Red Wastes, and you'll be seeing something that looks like that.
I prefer this.
You prefer the Red Wastes?
No, I mean this looked like if Atlanta actually looked like this, it'd be more interesting.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I mean nobody goes to the marshlands because there's nothing there. But I promise you, there's actually stuff there, and there's actually people there. It's just they're kind of weird. But yeah, that
sounds like Atlanta.
Yeah, that's right. So that kind of gives you some visuals. And then I don't have a visual for this, kind of intentionally. But there is also... well, you know what? I'll show you this one, because this one's the closest you're going to get. Here's an idea of what you can expect to the north, like northern West Web or into like the far north, stuff like that. So there are forests to the north, or at least you think there are remnants of forest. But there's also a lot of weird creatures on the surface to the north, because that's where it's not quite as desolate.
Uh, I'm just gonna say, if you took Symbaroum, Dune, put them into a blender, and then fast forwarded them to like some mutant world, post-apocalyptic world, that is the
Excuse me,
aesthetic you just gave us.
You forgot the dash of Mad Max.
That's right. That's right.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I love it. Those were so evocative. What extraordinary pieces of art. Thank you.
So now that we have some art for the world itself, we're going to talk about our bond. So this is the last piece of character creation. Um, um, so you're going to determine how you're connected to one other person in your group, and because there's only three of you, it's going to go pretty quick. Because let's say Ulysses goes first and um, he picks Zach. Well, then we're going to turn to Andrew and we're going to say, Andrew, pick one person that you're bonded with and tell me about that bond. And that's going to be the sum total. And so we're not going to have a perfectly balanced group of, because in the rules it says that if there's three people, then you'll share the same bond talent. But we're gonna pick two bonds, and some of you will have two features from that, and somebody will just have one. Andrew, I'm going to give you first choice here. If you want to go first, you can decide who you have a bond with and what that bond talent might be.
I think I want to be. I want to be bonded with Mr. Penny Dreadful over here.
Awesome.
Zach, that's you.
Oh. All right.
Awesome.
Okay, cool.
So there's a handful of bonds that you can pick from, roughly 20. So looking through here, though, you have Blood Oath, Bound by Magic. Both of those sound like they could.
Zach, should we just random it?
Yeah. Do you want to random it? Do you want to roll a? D100?
What do you think, Shadow?
Okay. Roll a D100.
You can do it in roll 20.
Oh, yep. Now I'm gonna use my colorful die. Let's see. They're spacey and they glow.
While you're doing that, Craig, where do people go on vacation? That's a great question, and that's really that's for you to kind of piece together in your own campaign. I don't know where people would go on vacation in this world. Probably won't. Unless you really like the marshlands, maybe you would go vacation down there and hang out with.
So humid and there's all the bugs.
Yeah.
55.
55. Andrew, what does 55 give you for connection?
Linked by prophecy. Prophecy has bound your destinies together, granting you glimpses of potential futures. Whenever your bonded survivor is moved to dying or exhausted during a fight scene, you gain 3 action points that must be immediately spent. You must be able to see one another to use this. I like this.
So,
Nice.
yeah, that's very cool. And you already had like this. You're a visionary already, Mr. Andrew. So, this prophecy is probably from your own lips, from your own eyes. I love it. All right.
Listen to me, Barbara. I've seen the future, and in it, you must protect me.
Fantastic. Linked by prophecy. Now, Ulysses, you have free reign here. Who would you like to be bonded with?
Well, let me just. You know what? I'm just going to roll a die, and if it's even, it's Andrew. If it's odd, it's Zach. It's a 1, so I'm bonded with Zach. And I'm going to opt for Dream Link. Linked by your dreams, you gain insights from a shared subconscious. You can ask the GM to gain a clue about solving a mystery or challenge inspired by a shared dream. It's usable once per session. Do you like that, Zach?
Yeah, I dig that.
Absolutely. Shared subconscious is a very interesting idea, especially based upon what that brush with death was. That's very cool. Very cool. Okay, so you guys each have at least one bond, and those are mechanical. So keep those
You
things.
know what? Hey, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Why not complete the triangle? I know the rules say for three, blah, blah,
Yeah.
but in some ways, I like the triangle being complete. I like that each of us has a bond with one of the others, and it's a
Okay.
different type of bond.
Okay.
Well,
Are
wait.
you guys okay with that?
Yeah, but Andrew
So,
also has a bond with me.
Yeah. So
yeah,
he's saying.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Andrew has a bond with my character as well.
Oh,
And
he
Andrew,
does?
and Andrew, you can roll that randomly if you like,
Yeah, that's
But
fine.
then
or you can
would have,
pick
That
one.
that
but
way.
then you would have. Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, math.
Yeah, because right now, Zach, you have two bonds, and both of them have one. So we're going to opt to allow them to form a bond with each other, which is going to give them also two bonds in total.
Gotcha.
So I rolled 99.
99 twin stars.
Yeah.
Almost as one soul and two bodies, twins can act in perfect synchronicity. Whenever your bonded survivor rolls a critical success on the D100 with an attack action, immediately gain an equal number of attack action points you immediately spend on an attack action. Wow.
That's cool.
Twin stars. Probably not the person you want to be. You imagined yourself being twins with, Mr. Chosen. Mr. the Chosen.
Not at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, he needs my diabolic and my beyonder connectivities and knowledge to help him with his visions.
What was our bond, Ulysses?
It's called Dream Linked. We have a
Dream
shared
linked.
subconscious.
A shared subconscious? Okay.
Yes, and you can ask the GM to gain a clue about solving a mystery or challenge inspired by a shared dream. This can be used once per session. Per person, I would assume.
I have an alternative suggestion, and feel free to turn it down, but if I was gonna pick you anyway, but I was thinking more of like a student-teacher thing because I want to learn more. I want to learn what you know. You seem very interesting and weird, and like you know a lot of creepy stuff. But that's an alternative. If you, what's the other one? Dream,
Dream linked.
and we share a subconscious.
Well, yeah, you're linked by dreams. You gain insights from a shared subconscious. And so that allows us mechanically, it allows us every session to
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that.
to gain, like, tells us what the shared dream was. Like when you and I want to do this, we kind of say, "What was that dream we had?" And he tells us, and he gives us the clue. You good with
Yeah, I
that?
dig that. Yep, I dig that.
And if you want to be still a student of his, Zach, and
Oh, yeah.
Flavor, that is completely reasonable.
For sure.
Cool.
Actually, I'd want to learn a lot from both of them after that. They can both do magic.
Okay, cool.
Alright.
All right, so we have built our bonds. So at this point, you guys have completed your character creation process. Before we move
Oh, actually,
on. Oh, yeah.
it was one other thing.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
One other thing. I wouldn't mind just sharing one or two highlights from character creation that we did off camera, because I think that this system is very fun, and it has a surprising dynamic to it. And like an example of it is, you get to roll on a table, what your human ancestry talent or trait is, right? And here I am. I had an idea that I had the academic upbringing. I was going to be a diabolist, and that kind of put me in a direction as a character that was going to have a high intelligence and a high willpower. But I rolled on the human trait table, and I got mountain among men. Permanently adjust your brawn secondary by one, and two-handed weapons will now only take up one weapon slot for you. And so even though like I did this more traditionally like arcanist type character from a professional level, I'm this big, beefy, athletic guy.
Mm.
And I just thought that created, and so what I ended up doing is, one of the approved attribute for uh, computation is to basically divide 85 points among the 7 attributes. And so I ended up choosing to have, um, because of bonuses for profession, um, I ended up getting to 55 in intelligence and 55 in will. But I chose to put a 50 in brawn, and I chose to put a 45 in combat. So I might be a closeted Max Minner, as I confessed on chat, but I just felt that that is something that came about because of the interesting dynamics of character creation.
Yeah, you're basically like Pyramid Head from Silent Hill now, right?
Well, you know what I thought? In a world of being underground and resources not being abundant, I feel like I must have been mother's favorite because I got fed a lot
Mm.
and a lot poured into me by family and neighbor.
You're like in another way, you think about like Rictus Erectus from Mad Max. Yes, you had a baby brother, perfect in every way.
so
Um,
so in keeping with that, and I know we talked about this, and I know Andrew is going to have a powerful weapon, but I rolled a 00 on my weapon chart just now.
nice,
And
nice.
so that qualifies me for a Zweihander. And um, I would love to have a Zweihander.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that you rolled Mountain Among Men. That's a great one, and it also, yeah, that's kind of the cool thing about rolling on tables, or at least choosing certain aspects of character creation to roll on tables, is that you end up with a character elements of your character that you wouldn't have done otherwise. Um, Zach, is there any part of your character that you built kind of on the fly or whatever that you found interesting, or that you want to make sure we bring up here?
I thought it was interesting that as a barber surgeon, my ancestral talent that I rolled was MacGyver, which allows me
Mm.
to like craft stuff. Oh, and I didn't think about it, but with the boundless creativity, that also kind of plays into that a little bit, which I think is interesting. And then I also, as a general talent, have knife work, which I like. And then for my weapons, I literally rolled saber and stiletto because I have melee as a skill, so I got to roll 2 weapons. So I have a dagger and a saber, which seems like fitting weapons that a barber surgeon might have among
Mm.
my pliers and my scalpels and things like that.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Yeah, and so think about also with your profession, um, you one of the things that you get for professions is you get a tool set, right?
Hmm.
Um, um, so what tool sets do you get with a barber surgeon?
Let me double check that here. The tool set. Where does it say that on the character sheet?
Give me a moment and I'll find it. I'm sorry, I sprung something on
What are
you
you looking
and
for?
myself. The tool sets that you get as a starting character. But we'll come back to that, Zach. I don't wanna bog you down with that at the moment. If it's not handy, we'll make sure we cover it before we get too deep. Okay,
No worries.
Andrew. Anything of fascination on your end?
Um, yeah, hmm. Not particularly. I kind of set out to build this type of character, and I actually was able to do it pretty well, even though quite a few of my things are random. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I ended up strong in combat and willpower and brawn. I'm also smart like Ulysses, and I have a big warhammer, so that's pretty cool.
Cool.
I also have armor, which is nice.
Yeah, that's super handy. So Zach, your tools, and we'll make sure that we get this for everybody, but every profession starts out with two tools, two tool sets. So Zach, yours are barber's razors and chirurgy tools.
Where do you see that?
That is on page of our document. That is on page 30.
It's where they list all the industrious professions from animal tamer to
Oh.
artisan.
Okay, I was looking in chapter 4.
Yeah.
And chirurgy is just an archaic word for surgery. So you have
you.
barber's tools and surgeon's
Before
tools.
they even knew what surgery really worked.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. I had to look it up too, so you're all good there. Now Ulysses, your tool sets are a grimoire and occult tools. You get to
Yes.
determine what occult tools might be composed of, but I like the idea that you have a grimoire. That's cool.
I think my occult tools are things like incense, chalk for or paint for drawing symbols, like stuff that you would use for ritualistic purposes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that. And then, Andrew, you've got an amulet and a grimoire.
Oh yeah, I've got them both already.
What does your amulet look like, Andrew?
I don't know. Let me think about it.
That's fine. Yeah, no problem. We won't call upon it right away. So, okay. You have an idea of who these characters are. One of the things I'm going to task you guys with, and you can also just pawn it off on me and I'll figure it out, but I would like to have a portrait of your characters before next session. You can find a picture online if you want, and we'll have a visual for these folks, for these fellas now. Okay, so we've got about an hour, a little less left in our session for the evening. I thought, why don't we take the rest of this time to give you guys a scene where we get the campaign hook. You do your call to action if we were playing Adventures League, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what we're going to do this evening. I think that it would have been. I think the game says that your brush with death happens within a year of whenever your campaign starts. I think for you three, it would be not a full year. It would probably be some weeks, but not an overlong period of time. Long enough for you three to try to wrap your heads around what you experienced, and for those bonds, those connective tissues to start to form, to where the three of you have found yourselves at this point to be almost, maybe not daily companions in some way, but not. You don't have to, like, not necessarily, side by side for 24/7, but close enough to. Go ahead.
We go over names one more time. Ulysses, what's your character's name?
Ezekiel. Ezekiel.
So your character's name is Easy-E. Gotcha. Zach, what's your character's name?
Ungus Finch, Ungus, and then Finch like the bird, Finch.
All right, so we've got Easy-E and Ungus Among Us.
And then, how do you spell your character's name?
It is Leonhardt.
That is not how I spelled it at all. Okay, Leon.
Hardt.
I like that. And then Sternwell?
Sternhell.
Sternhell. Hel or Hell?
2 L's.
Okay, cool.
Fantastic. So Ungus and Leon the professional, um, and Ezekiel are um, getting are familiar with each other at this point, and I think Leonhardt, you are certainly a visionary, but also you have elements of at times being prophetic, right? We've learned those two things about you this evening. So I think that it's probably an understanding that is not, those elements aren't they're not crazy abnormal in the West Web, but they do. But so in that sense, they're not necessarily secretive or things to be kept secret. But the combination of having access to divinity and divine magic, and also being prophetic, and also just kind of a culmination of experience. I think that that is part of the reason that you are brought into kind of the confidence of Preacher. The current Preacher is Preacher Nitmeyer. Preacher Nitmeyer. Nitmeyer is, like late 50s, so he's definitely an older fella here in this particular world.
Spell it for me.
Yep, KNIP Meyer, Meyer, Nip Meyer, all one word.
Okay.
He kind of rose to the ranks as someone who really pushed hard for it all hands on deck. Everyone on board. We're going to, within his lifetime, stamp out the abyss or lock it away or yada yada. Like his platform is one of taking the offense and being aggressive towards the abyss. And he has been in authority for 25, 30 years, something like that. And say again?
How old is he?
In his 50s. Certainly he has not achieved everything that he set out to do, but he has. It is it is certainly undisputed that the Thumpers have pushed further. The Godmen, as they're sometimes called, have pushed further in his lifetime than they had ever before, and that the cities, your cities, are less likely to experience assaults now than they were in decades past. So he's definitely done his job, but doing his job has come at the expense of a diverse population. Because everyone is kind of pressed into service of some sort at this point. He does not tolerate dissent. He does not tolerate passivity when it comes to this. Like, everyone must be engaged in the war effort. He has noticed you, and he has brought you into some form of confidence, taking a liking to you, so to speak. And I think because of that, he will ask you and the companions that went with you on your journey visit him in his chambers, in his council room, for a session of strategy. Council chambers looks like. Believe. Let's use this one. There you go. So you are brought, or you make entrance through different passageways and tunnels. You are, I think, in the city of Chi-Town, kind of the largest city that you have, but also the city closest to the chasm. Kind of, Chi-Town is like partially in the chasm. It's that close. It's that staunched in there. Like the upper city, Chicago, when the rift happened, part of it fell away. Most of the larger buildings were leveled, and what you have left of it is mostly subterranean or lower buildings. But you're brought into this chamber of Preacher, and in Preacher's chamber, he has many fascinating things. And in order to get here, you had to walk through kind of like the inner chambers of the Thumper echelon. And so you would have seen various quote-unquote artifacts. You would have seen tools of war. You would have seen armor sets. You would have seen things with gears and cogs and hoses and pipes and glass, things that aren't produced now, but are bygone relics of yesteryear that are typically affixed to things of power. And when you come into this room, he has a table, and on this table you can see a map, a series of maps, not unlike the map that you all looked at the beginning of our session. Maybe we'll just move to that screen so you guys can kind of keep an eye on that. And he, as he has the maps out, he also has like several books out, kind of stacked in a pile. Books are not produced anymore, so that's kind of a abnormality. Papers recycled, reused, and so the wealth here is pretty staggering. But the books that he has out, you can tell, are like not recycled, not reused. They're like he's actually referencing them from and whatever they've had written in them to begin with, which is of note. And as you walk forward and come look at the table, he draws your gaze to something that looks like this. This is the last handout for the evening, I think. There you go. It's laid out, and he draws your attention to this, and he says, "Child, this is an artifact that we've been scouring Terra for largely since my position solidified." He says, "Child, this artifact, there's at times were many such artifacts all throughout Terra, and we have found bits and pieces, elements of them, here and elsewhere, and We've done what we can to cobble those and to learn what we can of them and to piece together, but at every juncture, we fall short. And he says, in one of your recent visions, you spoke of a power, a hidden power that would be made plain and that would be revealed to all within the next moon cycle. And though you did not know at the moment that you uttered it what this power might be, I would propose that this device, this artifact, is perhaps exactly what you foresaw. He says, does this look familiar to you, child, in any way?
I have seen glimpses of this in my dreams, but do not know what it is. Will it help us end the threat? Will it help us seal them away?
He says, well, I believe that not only will it help us in sealing them away, perhaps put another nail in the coffin, but I think, I am of the opinion that this device will be a beginning of sorts for our people, ushering in something new, something pure. We have the components. If we can manage to procure this working artifact, I believe that not only will we see it power our war effort, but we will then be able to replicate it tenfold times. And with those devices, not only will we push the demon back into his hole, but we will drive back every foul creature, every unbelieving, filthy vagabond, every person who has ever wished the godmen anything less than full sanctity. I believe that these devices could push us over the edge into a complete control of our own destiny and our own fate worldwide.
Just show me where it is.
He says, it's north, and he draws your attention, draws your gaze, to kind of up in this general area, like up this direction. So a couple of hexes away-ish. He says it's here. It's deep in Grendel territory.
Yes, Park Ridge. No one goes there.
Yes. Yes. He says, it's yes. He says it's not outside of our means, and there are certainly more dangerous places in this world, as you may well know. The difficulty lies in a minor way in the journey, in the travel, he says. You'll have a few options on routes to take. Once you arrive, however, we believe, and really the way that we managed to procure an understanding of this device's existence is we have come to the understanding that this device is tucked within a Grendel den of some size. And what's more, we believe that they are using its power now for profane acts, for obscene engagements, and it is that power, the utilization of that power, that drew the eyes of our scouts, and that makes us confident that this is what we're after. If they hadn't used it, perhaps we would have never known of its existence, but here we are. And I believe that we can put it to much purer use than they. Simply just removing it from their hands does this world an infinite amount of good and would bestow blessings upon us all. But I believe we can put it to use thereafter.
I have a quick question. Where did the name Thumpers come from?
So out of...
in the lore, like in the world, why do they call themselves Thumpers?
Yeah, so... good question. So there's really...
Why did you choose that, Zach?
Yeah.
If the question is, I don't know. That if the
No,
answer is, I don't know. That's fine too.
definitely know. I definitely
Okay.
know. Yeah. So before I go any further into this, keep in mind that they don't remember this themselves. And
Okay.
So they are using a word that has no context for them. But the Thumpers come from the Midwest, of the U.S., and so they come from the idea of Bible thumpers, or the Bible Belt.
That's what I thought, and that's why they're godmen. Yeah,
That's right.
okay.
The Pennabites are largely because they're from Pennsylvania and the Pennsylvania Dutch.
Okay.
Like they're kind of the religious folk of that area, and the kind of isolationist, not really isolationist, but the kind of remove from society allowed them to survive over there. And then the Bimbacini is a type of wasp that is in like Arizona and Utah and things like that. It's like the red hornets or something like that. But that's the one that's like, it was probably a gang or something like that way back in the time, and that gang survived, and it's kind of grown since then. So they don't see themselves as the wasps. They don't have a wasp emblazoned on their their T-shirts or whatever, but they call themselves still the Bimbacini, which makes sense because actually it's a burrowing wasp, and they live in missile silos. So, yes,
That's cool. Dig it.
yeah. So, he says we don't. We have two options when it comes to procuring this device. The first option is an all-out assault of this Grindel Den. And we certainly could put men at arms into position there, raiding the den, scouring clean, and procuring this device. That is certainly within our means, and it is certainly something to be kept in reserve as an option. However, the loss of life we've calculated to be significant, as also is the expenditure of resources and other means, and also our own attention. We're making good headway in Reelfoot, and I would like to avoid pulling troops and pulling eyes away from Reelfoot for any amount of time, for any purpose, if there is any other opportunity. Thus, I have chosen you, and you have chosen your two companions, and I would see a more, let's say, covert, but a more targeted strike. He kind of motions to Ungus's saber, kind of strapped to his. He's like, pinpoint strike, the smaller strike, as opposed to, and then he maybe puts out a hand to Ezekiel and says, to a more massive blade.
In my giant warhammer.
Yes, the brute force of those. Yeah, he says, if the saber will not work, we will certainly, it's worth enough. We will supply the hammer.
Yeah. I beg your pardon, Your Excellency. You mentioned profanities. Of what sort?
I roll my eyes.
Just, just so we know what to expect.
He says,
Not the good kind, Ungus.
yeah. He
Good profanities? I've never heard of such a thing.
I roll my eyes again.
he says, I don't know what you know, or what your experience has been like up until this point with the Grindel. Ungus, you don't serve on the front of the North. I can't imagine that you've had strong interaction. What do you know of the Grindel and their profanities at a baseline?
They seem like dancy goatmen.
Uh, well, perhaps we will start then with a more wider context. And he kind of considers for a moment, and he says,
You have such eloquence in your words, Grundle. I'm sorry. Not Grundle, Ungus.
He says, they're more than goat, perhaps less than goat. Foul mix of man and beast. That beast may be of many sorts, and depending on which sub-region of their domain you frequent, you might find all manner of beastkin. He'll kind of like rattle off, just not really trying to give you an education here, but trying to provide context. But he would rattle off things, giving you names like the Equigorn, as an example, or the Hierarchus or the Taurus, things like that. But in your mind, as he kind of describes them, you would see think like Minotaur type entities, or satyrs,
Right.
certainly, or goatmen are definitely a very reasonable thought. But then also like pigmen and things like that, right? Like there's this idea of men and beast kind of hybrids, and it's like, but they're more than that, and if you only walk in expecting Grindel, you will be deceived in short notice. He says, unfortunately, I think that the true profanity of the Grindel, of course, their own forms are despicable. Their own actions more so, but the most despicable of said action, the most profane of said actions, is truly in their ability to sway and convert mankind. And what you are certainly to find in their den is not just Grindel themselves, but the converts that they've managed to acquire. Men that relish in an obscene glorification of the worst elements of humanity. Those things that separate us from beast are buried within the Grindel and within the converts, and those things in which mankind still has those sinuous links to our ancient four-legged kindred, those are the things the Grindel makes manifest and draws to the surface of man. Andrew, I saw you put a note up, I think.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, Ezekiel, perhaps you could curb your need for knowledge for one journey.
From a meta
Ezekiel Snickers.
perspective, the Grindel, are they remind me, they're kind of like the, so to speak, tieflings, for lack of a better word, of Zweihander. Are they fawns of like the Abyss? Are they connected to the Abyss in any way? Or in Reforged, are they?
Yeah, so fast answer, no. Yeah, and in Reforged they kind of have their own, like in the core lore of Reforged, they're their own entities. They're their own. They they
Okay.
just they are more susceptible, as are several other ancestries, but they are more susceptible to the temptations of corruption and the abyss. But they aren't creatures of the abyss themselves. In Terra, Pits of Terra, in this setting, as a meta thing, your characters wouldn't know this, but 100% Grendel are like the results of. I was gonna say that probably was the wrong word, so I was gonna say dalliances, but it's not like a sexual thing. It's more like, think like Middle Earth with like, you know, the spawn pits of the Uruks or things like that, and
Hmm.
crossing orcs with goblin men, that sort of an idea. Like Grendel are one of the initial aspects in which mankind was corrupted and tormented in that corruption by the abyss. So they
Oh,
are this weird hybrid of beast and man.
Like religious experimentation almost.
Yeah, by demons. Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
so we should
exactly.
not we should not be thinking satyrs and bacchanal.
Yeah. So the result, right, is that this event happened centuries ago. The chasm opening up and demon spawn coming up on Otherworld, and so the Grendel now, like obviously there are Grendel that are still integrated or in some ways integrated with the Abyss and with demons. But there's whole sections of Grendel, like the Grendel population has just exploded. It's all over the place in the north, and so um, there are Grendel that have nothing to do with the Abyss other than their kind was initially formed by them. But what is certainly true is that they're kind of a devolution of man back to kind of its more primal state. Um, and
Cruel, nasty, brutish, and short.
yeah, um, but yeah, you could still think about like satyrs and things like that, because the reality is that there are aspects of mankind or of you know of animalistic urges or inclinations that come out, and there's also like um, they're more fickle, they're more corrupted, and those things kind of manifest. There's certainly like demon princes that are uh, more in that way. The Prince of Pleasure, right, is much more in
So,
line with the Grendel.
so how curious would Ezekiel be about the Grendel if they have this kind of demonic origin? Being a Diabolist, wouldn't uh, I be quite intrigued and fascinated by them?
That's completely reasonable to me. Yeah, absolutely. Anything like, my assumption is that you have some fascination at the moment with anything tied to the abyss, and only as you progress as a character, perhaps that more general enthusiasm becomes refined into a specialization, a special area of knowledge or study.
Um, so I'm going to, if you're okay with it, Zach, I'm going to flex into Dreamlink for the first time
Mm-hmm.
because as Teacher Nipmeyer explains the mission, describes the Grendel Den and this power artifact, I feel that something as he's describing things, he's describing this kind of saber-like approach we need to take, the den it's in, the profanity of the profane nature of the Grendel. It kind of it triggers in me memory of a dream I had, and I feel that that Ungus and Ezekiel dreamed of a forest, dreamed of an entrance and dreamed of a den.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, does that dream help us think through the best way to possibly approach or find what we're looking for?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit there. I think what you see in your dream, or what you remember seeing in your dream, as he starts to describe this den, is um, you see a basin, dry basin, and you are walking across this dry basin, um, um, and you kind of like look out to your west, and all you see for as far as you can see is basin. You look behind you, and you can see a shore, far distant shore. There's not a trace of water here, though. Ahead of you, you can see where ancient water scoured rock and carved out tunnels, and you can look ahead and you can see this weird like lump of cliff, that kind of abnormal shapes but rounded and smooth, and as you look at it you can see punctured into this cliff face at the edge of the basin are several openings that are into what you're assuming was once probably underground caves, underwater caves, but is now open to the elements. And you can see above it, above on the upper section of the cliff, you can see like twisted, gnarled trees hanging there. And I think that in your dream, if you walk to the edge of this hole, one of these cave openings, you remember hearing the bellow and cry of livestock down there. At least that's what you interpreted it as before. Bleating, yes. The screaming of the lambs. And
It's more scary, Zach. God damn
it. Yeah. I think that it doesn't necessarily give you a vision of the route, but it maybe gives you a vision of the destination. This series of caverns tucked into a cliff face at the edge of a basin.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. But to
Thank you.
Yeah, to that end, I think the last piece here is he's detailing. Now, you guys are welcome to ask more questions or whatnot, but I think the thing that he's going to leave to you to determine. And by the way, as part of this, if you guys want to ask for a reasoned amount of supplies, you could ask for certain things there. But I think what he's going to wish to hear from you is a stratagem for your advance, knowing what route you will take, so that should you not return, they know what route to follow. So you guys have a choice. If we look at the map, oh goodness, if we look at the map, you guys have kind of a going overland or underground. If you're here in Chi-Town and you're heading over to about this area, let me zoom in here. I can tell you exactly.
Oh, that's actually Niles. That's worse.
Yes. Let me see if I can mark it. Like right in here, this hex right here. So it's like, just draw a mark on it for now, and I'll get a cool thing to put on there later. But
you wheeling?
Something in this area. You're going to need to choose between taking tunnels. So if you look on the map to the right, you will see like you see those like tendrils of demon influence. Why it's called the West Web is that there's a lot of like network of caves and tunnels, and like when that chasm opened up, it fractured the earth all around. And so there's all sorts of ravines and canyons and tunnels, and then some of them have been like finished out by man in centuries. Some of them haven't. You can maneuver through there underground by using some of the same tunnels that thumpers have used for centuries, and by potentially maneuvering through demon territory as well. Or you can go above ground, and going above ground has its own hazards, especially more like environmental, but you'll deal with less demon influence there, and you'll be more susceptible to other things. Is there an interest either way to you? Yeah.
Tunnels, demons, tunnels, demons.
I like either. They both serve my interest.
I know how to fend off the demons if we encounter them. We'll be safer underground.
I'm not bad with the blade. You're too kind.
Just to be clear, we will kill the demons, right, Ezekiel?
Yes.
Insight.
Well, you know what? I think this is a fun moment, actually, because here's the thing. You guys have gotten to know each other. But there's certainly still things about each other that... and you've come to, like, an agreement or an understanding that, like, you are going to get along with each other because of your shared experiences and now your shared mission. However, there are pieces about each other that you haven't quite sorted yet, because you really have only truly known each other for a handful of weeks. So I think it's completely reasonable here to do a roll, and I think why not do some rolling in our game here at the end. So Andrew, why don't you roll me an insight check, skill check, and Ulysses, you can decide if you succeed how much you want to be revealed or not, but I would like for you to roll me a probably a guile test, unless you have something else skill wise that makes sense to you.
Let me just check one thing.
Sure.
And
while you're getting that set up, Andrew, was that your roll?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So Andrew rolled an 86, which is not a success. What was your target number?
If you look at the roll, it'll
there it
tell
is.
you.
54.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So you had a better than average chance of succeeding, but not good enough. 86. But that doesn't mean that you have failed, because with an opposed test like this, Ulysses could potentially roll even worse.
My
all right.
rolls start again.
All right. I see. Guile's about using bluster and underhandedness and manipulating. That's
Sure.
not what Ezekiel does.
Fair enough.
So I'm going to give you a choice. I think that this is either like the most straightforward one would be like a resolve about me keeping calm under the pressure of scrutiny.
Yeah.
I'm in front of Preacher,
Yeah.
Knipmeyer.
Yeah.
I'm being asked this. But the more interesting and more Zweihander Reforged different thing would be a gamble test. Because gamble is intelligence based. It starts off with fixing fights, playing parlor games, cards, darts, and dice.
I like that. Yeah, let's do gamble.
Risky maneuvers, yeah. And it's about cheating at games of chance. So it's it's about, subterfuge and I think stuff that's more intelligence based than and I will do that. So let me just go to our roll 20. Did Andrew roll in the roll 20?
He did.
did.
He rolled an 86.
So if you do 1d100 and then the less than sign and then whatever your target number is, it'll tell you if you succeed or fail.
Did
Nice.
you do that as a formula, or did you do that in the advanced dice roller?
No, I just typed it out.
Okay, what do you type as the initial part? Do you just type out
/R.
rolling 1d? Okay, /R, and then is there a space, or do you just do 1d100?
I put it in the chat.
There you go. Yeah,
Cool.
then
Thank
space,
you.
then 1.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
No, so there's no space after the less than sign. It's just your target number.
Okay, and my target number is 65. Okay, let's see if this rolls. Okay, let me try this one more time. Thank you for showing this to me. And 65.
You have to do /R.
/R /, right?
Yep.
Okay, let me try this one more time. I think I got it now. There we go. I rolled a 5.
Whoa, okay. So, with that, we have a success and we have a failure. So, as he says, you're going to kill the demons, right? Ezekiel. Ezekiel, how do you respond to that?
I say, Leonhard, Preacher, Nipmeyer, Ungus, we will either ward them away and send them back, bring them into the chasm, or we'll contain, control, and defeat them.
Anyone have any objection to me collecting a few spare parts while we kill these demons, just purely for scholarly purposes, of course?
You know, I say absolutely. I look Leonhardt in the eye and I say, why do you think I carry this sword with me? So I can play nice with the demons? Absolutely not.
I think I've seen you cut yourself more with that sword than you have a demon.
I'm starting to get ahead.
Not yet, soon, hopefully.
Few more surgeries.
And to be honest, I think that while Ezekiel definitely has a passion for secret knowledge, forbidden knowledge, and learning everything he can about demons, I don't think he has a profound affiliation and love thereof. Now, when it comes to the crouching one, it's a little bit different.
That's right. Awesome. Okay. So you have chosen to go through the tunnels, through the underground, to the basin. You have some idea of how to get there through the tunnels, and you have a vision of your destination, which will help in the navigation process. Last thing here, we have about 5 minutes before we wrap up. Anything springing to mind that, hey, we should have this with us, or we should make sure that we're well provisioned in this way? Lanterns. Yes.
We're going to need plenty of laudanum and smelling salts.
We will definitely need food, much food, and possibly water.
So you can all have, you're welcome to have, like, a lantern. That's completely reasonable. You can keep that as a note. You want laudanum, Zach?
For the pain.
Oh, yes, purely for the pain.
Purely for the pain. Yeah, okay. So let's see. you can have laudanum. That's not an issue at all. It's a matter of how much you can procure. Do you have any to begin with on your person?
We get one, I believe, one vial of laudanum and smelling salts each,
Do we?
just to start. Yeah.
Where's that?
It's in character creation somewhere, under equipment.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Hey, Zach, you had mentioned that the pennies have firearms, but do the thumpers have any firearms?
They do. It's limited, but you do have some ancient firearms. Yes. Yes.
I just wonder if it would behoove us to have one of us, I mean, a pistol of some sort, or some type of musket or rifle. I'll let you
Yeah.
determine. I just feel like us having some type of gun out in the wilds in the open would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, sorry.
No, go for it. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I know that in the like core Zweihander setting, like black powder and firearms are not, they're not like rampant, but they are present. Like they've been invented, and like they're kind of like they're like cutting edge technology, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Where do they stand in this post-apocalyptic world where Glock 9s have been invented, but probably don't have a whole lot of,
Yeah. So, there like you could find a firearm like to use your example, like a Glock or whatever. Like they're entirely possible, but most of the ones that have intricate parts, heavy amounts of working pieces, have fallen into complete unusability. So a lot of what's left are like shotguns and things like that are very much more like simple and less moving pieces, less small pieces. So you might like think like in Zweihander proper, you have like black powder things, right? Like flintlocks and things. That level or just slightly above it is something that is rare but not unheard of. Anything more advanced than that, like an assault rifle, is
sure,
on the level of a magic item.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I just rolled on the D100 black powder weapon thing. Got that 99 in roll 20, and that would be a turnout pistol. I don't know if that's available to us.
Let's see. Yeah. Now, does anybody have? Does anybody feel like they are? Yes. The fast answer is you guys can have a firearm because why not? It'll be fun. But the other side of that is that pulling up the skill sheet here. But do you guys have any? Does anyone feel like they're skilled enough to use said pistol on the regular?
No.
So if
not.
if it's a combat roll, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're using your combat ability.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I've got a 50 in combat,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't have a skill rank in
black
powder weapons, but that it doesn't require me to use it, right? I still get a 50, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in this case, you could have a turnout pistol, and it can use and you can shoot it using agility. You just wouldn't get any bonuses, for the black powder, at all. But yeah, you could absolutely do that.
I just love the idea of like the same way that like we find Civil War or even Revolutionary War era firearms today, and like a lot of times they're unfireable because like if you try, it could literally explode in your face and like send you to the hospital. Like finding just a Glock buried in the dirt and like trying to fire it, and it's
Honestly,
so old. And
if you found a Glock buried in the dirt and you picked it up and put rounds in it, it would probably shoot.
that's true. That's true.
Like
They're meant. They're made so much better today, to be
if you
honest. But
if you found one in the dirt, it would probably have a chance of working, other than the ammunition, right? Like that's the big thing.
Right.
But the other thing is that, like, maybe several hundred years ago, firearms were much more prevalent. But as they were used, as they were carried, as they were whatever, they've deteriorated, pieces
Right.
have broken, and all that. And so it's less that. So a found one has probably more chances of working than, like, almost certainly you guys just walk through on your way to Preacher, like an armory that has like scrapped pieces of firearms that they've kind of held on to over the years, and what they
Interesting.
have left is, you have you said a turnout pistol, like, it's probably like three different guns that have been like put together and like rigged. Like, there's probably an upper and a lower from two different guns that they've managed to make work. Um, and it's dangerous for its own reasons.
that's
But
cool.
but it works, right? Like, it works, and that makes it incredibly valuable. Um, you can absolutely have, let's say, Zach, let's say that you can have let's roll some dice here, because you're not going to get any extra. Well, I shouldn't say that. You may very well get extras on this, but you won't be hanging out in a lot of cities. You can have 4 extra doses of laudanum for your group in general.
And what about the smelling salts?
Smelling salts, you can have 2 doses of smelling salts.
Okay, so 5 and 3 total per person.
No, this is in addition to whatever you guys had before. Individually, as a group, you get 4 more doses and 2 more doses.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I
And
see.
Andrew, anything else that's popping into your mind other than the lanterns?
Rope.
Rope, no problem. You can have rope. As much as you can carry rope wise, you're welcome to have. Awesome. Okay. With that, you've gotten some supplies. If you guys think of other supplies that you want between now and next session, we can roll for them, or we can talk dynamite. You know what? That'd be an exciting thing to maybe get here at the end.
Roll for it.
Roll for it. Yeah. Roll me a. Let's see here.
Got persuasion. Occultism. I don't know why it would be that though.
Let's see. Do you have craft?
I do not.
And you don't have black powder.
Nope. Folklore.
I'll let you make a persuasion, but it's going to be at hard difficulty.
Well, -20.
That's right.
I have some miscellaneous drugs just because.
You could probably get those in the den that you're about to head to. Yeah,
We'll bring that up next session.
There you go. Yeah, go for it, Andrew. The hard check, but we're giving you a skill that you have proficiency. Oh, a 90. A 90. No.
So I've rolled a 99 and a 90 tonight.
That's right. And an 86 or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no such luck on procuring dynamite. I think probably the answer there is that dynamite is probably something that is put to use pretty quickly after it's found. And so they don't have any on hand at the moment, because this is a situation where you have a mission that is super important. So they're not just going to tell you, no, fuck off, right? Like, they're gonna have if they have something that you need, they would probably give it to you within
Sure.
largely reason. So, okay, well, let's.
Dynamite also gets really unstable when it gets old.
Exactly. So with that, you have gotten your gear. Again, if you have that second thoughts on gear, that's fine. But we will end tonight's session with you heading out, stepping out of Chi-Town and into the network of tunnels, the West Web, on your way to the Grindle Den. And we'll call that in for the session, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. If that sounds good to you folks.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
All right.
Excellent.
Stream as we're wrapping up. Yeah, 2 weeks from now, roughly, we'll play True Session 1. We'll roll a bunch of dice, I think, next session.
Into the Grundle Den.
That's right. We're gonna check that out. But until then, Zwei Hunter Kickstarter launches tomorrow, Tuesday, March 12th. So keep an eye out there. And until then, until